He drank the alien princess's poison, then wiped his mouth and asked if there were seconds. The royal court of the Xylian Empire, a gathering of the galaxy's most lethal predators, went dead silent. But in that silence, a shift occurred, a shift that would topple dynasties and rewrite the stars. Before we dive into this story of survival and unexpected romance, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. And before we get started, drop a comment below and tell me, where are you watching from today? We love seeing how far these stories travel. The Great Hall of the Citadels of Glass was designed to intimidate. Massive spires of transparent crystal pierced the purple sky of Xylos Prime, refracting the light of the twin suns into blinding shards of violet and gold. Inside, the air was cold and smelled faintly of ozone and crushed mint, the scent of Xylian pheromones. To a human, it smelled like an antiseptic spill in a hospital. To the galaxy, it smelled like death. Ronin stood in the center of the obsidian circle, his wrists bound by energy cuffs that hummed with a low, menacing frequency. He wore the gray, nondescript jumpsuit of a Class D laborer, the lowest rung of the galactic ladder. He was a human, a species the Xylian Empire considered little more than soft, water-filled bags of inefficient biology. Humans were new to the galactic stage, and they had arrived not with armadas, but with leaky colony ships and desperate trade deals. They were seen as weak, disposable. Ronin had been pulled from the waste recycling decks of a captured orbital station 3 days ago. He hadn't been told why. He had simply been scrubbed down, scanned, and thrown onto a transport ship bound for the capital. Now he stood before Emperor Vrakos and his daughter, Princess Kaelia. Vrakos sat on a throne carved from a single leviathan bone, his 4 eyes narrowing as he looked down at the human. The emperor was 7 feet of lean muscle and iridescent scales that shifted from deep emerald to midnight blue. Beside him sat Kaelia. She was smaller, her scales a softer, luminous teal, and her eyes were a startling, piercing gold. She looked bored, more than bored. She looked resigned. "This is the specimen?" Vrakos's voice boomed, amplified by the acoustics of the hall. "A mud dweller from the Sol system?" "Yes, Your Radiance," the Grand Vizier hissed, stepping forward. He was an older Xylian, his scales graying and peeling at the edges. He was selected for his expendability. The protocol of the Black Chalice demands a sacrifice from a non-sentient species. The humans fit the biological classification of semi-sentient labor force. Ronin kept his head up. He knew better than to speak. He had learned in the recycling bays that Xylians killed for insolence, for eye contact, or sometimes just for sport. But he watched Kaelia. Unlike her father, whose gaze was filled with contempt, she was looking at him with a strange intensity. It wasn't hatred. It was curiosity mixed with something that looked painfully like pity. "Proceed," Vrakos waved a clawed hand. "Let us see if the stars accept my daughter's ascension." The ritual was ancient. Every Xylian royal, upon reaching maturity, had to distill their own unique biological toxin. It was a mark of their lineage, their power. To prove the potency of the bloodline, the toxin had to be consumed by a living vessel. If the vessel died instantly, the lineage was strong. If the vessel lingered, the lineage was weak. A servant approached Ronin carrying a tray made of floating anti-grav metal. On it sat a single goblet, the Black Chalice. Inside, a liquid swirled, viscous, glowing with a faint, sickly green luminescence. It fumed, sending tendrils of vapor into the air that made the nearby guards step back. "Human," the Vizier announced, "you have been granted the ultimate honor. You will consume the essence of Princess Kaelia. You will become the instrument of her glory. Drink and embrace the void." The cuffs on Ronin's wrists deactivated, falling to the floor with a clatter. He rubbed his wrists, looking around the hall. Hundreds of Xylian nobles watched him from the tiered balconies. They were waiting for the show. They were waiting for him to convulse, to bleed out from his eyes, to scream. Ronin looked at the cup. He looked at Kaelia. She turned her head away, unable to watch. "I'm sorry," she whispered, the translator on Ronin's ear picking up the subvocal frequency. Ronin didn't want to die, but he knew the guards behind him had plasma pikes aimed at his spine. If he refused, he'd be skewered. If he drank, he'd be poisoned. It was a choice between a quick death and a mysterious one. He reached out and took the chalice. The cup was cold. He swirled the liquid. It smelled sharp, acidic, like the industrial cleaner they used on the recycling decks, but with an underlying organic note. "Bottoms up," Ronin muttered. He tipped the chalice and downed the contents in one long swallow. The taste hit him like a freight train. It was bitter, incredibly sour, and burned his throat like fire. It tasted like he had just swallowed a mixture of battery acid, incredibly spicy peppers, and cheap vodka. His eyes watered. His stomach churned, protesting the sudden influx of the volatile fluid. The entire hall leaned forward. The vizier began to count down the seconds to anticipated organ failure. Ronin coughed, a harsh, rasping sound that echoed in the silence. Princess Kaelia squeezed her eyes shut, gripping the armrests of her throne. Ronin coughed again, then cleared his throat loudly. He beat his chest with his fist. "Whoa," he said, his voice rough. "That has a kick." He wiped a trickle of green liquid from his lip. The burning in his stomach was settling into a warm, spreading heat. It wasn't pleasant exactly, but it wasn't killing him. It felt like the aftermath of a dare back on Earth involving Carolina Reapers and moonshine. He looked up at the throne. Emperor Vrakos had risen to his feet. The vizier's jaw had dropped open. Kaelia was staring at him, her golden eyes wide as saucers. Ronin held out the empty cup to the trembling servant. "Is there any more? I haven't eaten since the transport docked, and honestly, that cleared my sinuses right up." The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. The vizier scrambled backward as if Ronin had suddenly turned into a monster. "Impossible," he sputtered. "The neurotoxin, it should have liquefied his esophagus. It should have stopped his heart." "Maybe it was a bad batch," Ronin suggested helpfully. "Tasted a bit like citrus and sulfur. Needs more salt." "Silence," Vrakos roared. The sound shook the crystal spires. "The human lives, this is a mockery. Kaelia, your distillation is water. You have shamed this house." Kaelia stood up, her bioluminescence flaring red with shame and anger. "I followed the protocols perfectly, Father. The toxin is pure. Then why does the mud dweller stand?" Vrakos pointed a claw at Ronin. "Guards, dispose of this anomaly. And take the princess to her chambers. She will remain there until she can produce a venom worthy of the throne." Two guards surged forward, their pikes humming. Ronin instinctively raised his hands, but before they could strike, Kaelia moved. She didn't move like a princess, she moved like a viper strike. She vaulted over the railing of the dais and landed between Ronin and the guards. "No," she commanded. Her voice carried the harmonics of royal authority. "By the laws of the trial, if the vessel survives, the vessel belongs to the maker. He consumed my essence, he is mine." Vrakos froze, the court murmured. This was an obscure law, rarely invoked because, well, the vessel never survived. "You wish to keep a pet, daughter?" Vrakos sneered. "A reminder of your failure?" "I wish to study him," Kaelia said, her chin held high, though Ronin could see her hands trembling. "To understand why my toxin failed. Until then, under the law of the trial, he is under my protection. Touch him and you insult my claim." The Emperor stared at her for a long, tense moment. Then he sat back down, dismissing them with a wave of his hand. "Take your trash, Kaelia. Get him out of my sight." Ronin didn't argue as Kaelia grabbed his arm and dragged him out of the Great Hall. He was alive for now. They didn't speak until they reached her private sector of the palace. It was a gilded cage, beautiful but isolating. It was filled with rare plants that hissed when you walked by them and pools of liquid mercury that served as decoration. She pushed him into a sitting room and activated the privacy shield. The moment the shimmering field snapped into place, her regal posture collapsed. She paced frantically, her tail lashing behind her. "What are you?" she hissed, turning on him. "That dose was enough to kill a leviathan. I distilled it from the nightshade gland myself. It dissolves carbon-based cellular structures on contact." Ronin sat down on a strange floating chair. "Look, Princess, I don't know what to tell you. On my world, we have things called chili peppers. We eat them for fun. We drink ethanol to relax. Maybe my stomach is just tougher." "Tougher?" She approached him, reaching out a hand as if to touch his face, then pulling back sharply. "You are soft, your skin is unarmored. You have no claws, no venom sacs. You are a biological dead end." "Thanks for the compliment," Ronin said dryly, "but I'm still breathing. So what happens now?" Kaelia slumped onto a divan opposite him. Now I am a laughingstock, a princess with venom so weak a human asks for seconds. I will never find a mate. I will never inherit the throne. I will rot in this tower." Ronin looked at her, really looked at her. Beneath the alien features, the scales, and the deadly reputation, he saw the same look he used to see in the mirror back in the recycling bays. The look of someone who had been told they were worthless their entire life. Why do you need venom to find a mate? Ronin asked. Kaelia looked at him as if he were stupid. Among Xylians, touch is lethal. Our skin secretes a mild toxin constantly. Only a mate with a compatible immune system can withstand intimate contact. The courting ritual involves exchanging venom. If I cannot produce a strong venom, I am seen as genetically inferior, and if my skin's toxin is unpredictable, no suitor will risk touching me. She looked at her hands. I have never been touched, Ronin. Not without gloves, not without force fields. My mother died when I was a hatchling. My father sees me only as a political tool. I'm poison to everyone, Ronin processed this. The monster of the galaxy was just a lonely girl who couldn't hug anyone without killing them. Well, Ronin stood up slowly. I drank your best shot, right? The concentrated stuff. Yes, and I'm fine. A little heartburn maybe, but fine. He took a step toward her. Kaelia flinched, backing away. Stay back. My skin secretions are active. If you touch me, your skin will burn. Will it? Ronin held out his hand. Or will it just tickle? You are foolish, she warned, but she stopped retreating. Ronin reached out. He didn't hesitate. He placed his hand gently on her cheek. Kaelia gasped, squeezing her eyes shut, waiting for his scream, waiting for his flesh to blister. Ronin felt a tingling sensation. It was like touching a static-charged balloon, or maybe dipping his hand in carbonated water. It was warm, it tingled, but it didn't burn. See, Ronin said softly. No melting. Kaelia opened her eyes. They were wide, shimmering with moisture. She raised her own hand, trembling, and placed it over his. Her skin was cool and smooth, like polished jade. She traced the lines of his palm, the rough calluses from years of manual labor. You feel warm, she whispered. Like standing near a reactor core, but soft. That's just being human, Ronin smiled. For the next few weeks, life in the tower changed. Ronin became Kaelia's secret. She told the court she was experimenting on him, subjecting him to grueling tests to refine her venom. In reality, they were just hanging out. Ronin taught her about Earth. He told her about oceans that were blue, not purple. He told her about snow. He explained the concept of music that wasn't just war chants. In return, Kaelia taught him Xylian history, the complexities of court politics and how to navigate the deadly flora of the palace gardens without losing a limb. They ate together. Kaelia discovered that Ronin could consume the toxic delicacies of her table, fruits filled with citric acid, meats cured in minor neurotoxins, with no issue. He explained that human livers were basically evolutionary trash compactors designed to filter out everything from alcohol to preservatives. You are a species of impossible contradictions, Kaelia mused one evening, watching Ronin juggle 3 poisonous death apples. You are physically weak yet biologically resilient. You are short-lived yet you waste time on art and stories. You are chaos. We prefer the term adaptable, Ronin said, catching an apple and taking a bite. We survive, that's what we do. I am beginning to see that, she said softly. But the bubble couldn't last. The political sharks were circling. Lord Varric, a rival suitor from the brutal southern clans, arrived at court. He was massive, scarred, and rumored to have killed 3 of his previous mates during the courting rituals. He wanted the throne, and the quickest way to the throne was through Kaelia. Varric didn't care about her venom. He cared about the alliance. He demanded a public union ceremony. Emperor of Rakos, eager to secure the southern armies and forget his daughter's failure, agreed. The ceremony was set for the eclipse. Kaelia was terrified. He will kill me, she told Ronin the night before. Not with poison, he is cruel. Once he has the alliance, he will arrange an accident. And he will kill you first, just to clear the board. Let's run, Ronin said. We can steal a transport, I can fly. I used to pilot atmospheric skimmers before I got stuck on the station. There is nowhere to run. The Empire spans the sector. She looked at him, her golden eyes hard. There is only one way. The challenge of the blood. The what now? An ancient right. If a suitor is challenged, they must fight. But no Xylian will challenge Varric, he is undefeated. I'm not a Xylian, Ronin said. You are a human, he will snap you in half. Maybe, Ronin shrugged, but he's expecting to fight a Xylian. He's expecting claws and venom. He's not expecting dirty fighting. The day of the ceremony, the grand hall was packed. Varric stood on the dais, preening. He looked like a tank made of scales. When the vizier asked if there were any objections, Ronin stepped forward from the shadows of Kaelia's retinue. I object, his voice rang out. The hall erupted in laughter. Varric looked down at the human like he was a bug. The pet speaks. Does it wish to die before its mistress? I challenge you, Ronin said, walking into the obsidian circle, for the hand of the princess, and for my own freedom. Vrakos looked interested for the first time in weeks. A death match between a warlord and a waste recycler. This will be entertaining. Aloud, Kaelia screamed, "No!" But the guards held her back. Varric jumped down into the circle, shaking the floor. He drew 2 serrated blades. I will peel you slowly, soft skin. Ronin didn't have weapons. He had his jumpsuit and a small metal canister he had swiped from the cleaning supplies closet earlier that morning. Varric lunged, a blur of speed. Ronin didn't try to block, he threw himself to the side, rolling. The blade sparked against the floor where his head had been. Stop running, Varric roared, slashing again. Ronin ducked, the wind of the blade ruffling his hair. He was fast, fueled by adrenaline and the desperate realization that this was a terrible idea. He needed an opening. Varric was huge, but he was arrogant. He telegraphed his moves. Varric swung a massive overhand chop. Ronin stepped inside the guard, suicidally close. He didn't punch, he knew his fist would break against the scales. Instead, he pulled the pin on the canister he was holding and jammed it into the gap in Varric's neck armor, right where the gills were. It was a canister of concentrated industrial polishing solvent, high-pressure foam. Varric howled as the foam expanded, spraying into his sensitive gills and eyes. It wasn't a deadly poison, but it was a chemical irritant designed to strip oxidation off metal. To a Xylian's mucous membranes, it was pure agony. Blinded and choking, Varric thrashed wildly. Ronin didn't stop. He kicked the back of Varric's knee, a universal weak point for bipedal anatomy. The giant crumbled to one knee. Ronin scrambled onto his back, locking his arm around Varric's throat in a chokehold. Get off me, parasite, Varric gurgled, clawing at his own neck. But the foam made his scales slick. He couldn't get a grip. Ronin squeezed. He knew he couldn't choke out a Xylian the normal way, their arteries were armored. But he could cut off the airflow. Varric stood up, slamming his back against the crystal wall. Ronin groaned as the impact rattled his teeth, but he held on. He held on like a tick. He held on like a human who had nothing left to lose. Submit, Ronin yelled, his voice straining. Or I'll keep squeezing until your head pops. Varric was turning a dark shade of violet. The lack of oxygen combined with the chemical burning was sending him into shock. He dropped his swords, he flailed, and then slowly his massive frame went limp, sliding down the wall. Ronin released him and rolled away, gasping for air. The hall was silent again. The same silence as the poison ritual. Ronin stood up, bruised, bleeding from a cut on his forehead, and covered in polishing foam. He looked at the Emperor. I believe, Ronin panted, pointing at the unconscious warlord. That counts as a win. Emperor Vrakos looked at Varric, then at Ronin. He looked at Kaelia, who had broken free of her guards and was looking at Ronin with a mixture of horror and absolute adoration. The human defeated Varric, Vrakos muttered. Without claws, without venom. I improvised, Ronin said. Kaelia ran into the circle. She didn't care about the court. She didn't care about the toxin warnings. She threw her arms around Ronin, burying her face in his neck. The court gasped. They waited for Ronin to die from the contact. He didn't. He hugged her back, patting her scaled back awkwardly. I got foam on your dress, he mumbled. I don't care, she sobbed. You idiot, you brave, stupid idiot. Vrakos stood up. He looked tired. But for the first time, he looked at Ronin with something other than contempt. He looked at him with calculation. The law is absolute, Vrakos announced. The victor claims the spoils. The engagement to Lord Varric is annulled. He looked at his daughter, and it appears we have underestimated the biology of the soul system. If he can withstand your touch, Kaelia, and defeat our warlords, then he is not a pet. He paused, the weight of the Empire behind his words. He is a suitor. Life changed after that. It wasn't perfect. There were still assassins. Ronin survived 2 attempts, one involving a kinetic dart he dodged and another involving poison in his soup which he just thought was extra spicy. There were still diplomats who sneered at him. But Ronin wasn't the waste recycler anymore. He was the Iron Consort, the man who drank death and asked for seconds, the man who choked out a warlord. One evening, months later, Ronin and Kaelia stood on the balcony of her tower, watching the twin suns set. The sky was a bruising purple, bleeding into night. Do you miss Earth? Kaelia asked, leaning her head on his shoulder. Her skin was warm against his. Sometimes, Ronin admitted, I miss pizza. Real pizza, not the weird algae discs they serve in the mess hall. I miss rain that doesn't smell like sulfur. We could visit, Kaelia said. Father is discussing a new trade treaty. He wants to know if there are other humans like you. He calls them the Unkillable Legion. Ronin laughed. He's going to be disappointed when he finds out I'm just a guy with a high tolerance for spicy food and a stubborn streak. You are more than that, Kaelia said fiercely. She turned him to face her, her golden eyes glowing in the twilight. You are the only one who saw me. Everyone else saw a weapon or a failure. You saw just Kaelia. Well, Ronin smiled, brushing a thumb over her cheek scales. You're hard to miss. She leaned in, and this time there was no hesitation. No fear of poison, no flinching. She kissed him. It tasted like ozone and mint, cool and electric. It was alien, and it was perfect. As they broke apart, Ronin looked out at the alien city, the spires glowing in the dark. He had been dragged here as a joke, a disposable token. Now he was standing at the top of the world, holding the hand of the most dangerous woman in the galaxy. You know, Ronin said, looking at the chalice of wine sitting on the nearby table. A vintage terrified servants whispered was lethal to anyone but royalty. All this diplomacy is making me thirsty, Kaelia laughed, a sound that was becoming the most beautiful music in the Empire. She handed him the glass. To the poison? She asked, raising an eyebrow. Ronin clinked his glass against hers. To the antidote, he replied, and asking for seconds. And that is where we leave Ronin and Kaelia, ruling the stars one spicy drink at a time. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you want to see more stories about humans confusing aliens with their sheer durability, click the video on your screen right now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.